The sun was sinking low over Tyler, Texas, painting the sky in thick, bruised oranges, as if the suffocating heat of the day had finally taken on a visible hue. It had been one of those heavy, sweaty afternoons that clung to your skin, even in the meager shade. Most folks were either retreating indoors or counting the minutes until they could, but Donnell Booker wasn't most folks. At 29, he was the quiet type, a man who spoke little unless necessary, letting his hands do the talking. At Cliff's Auto and Tire, where he rebuilt engines with an almost uncanny intuition, they said he could do it with his eyes half closed. Most days, that's exactly how he worked, head down, focused, keeping to himself. It was just past 5:30 when the sound pierced the shop's ambient hum of distant traffic and lingering oil fumes, a metallic clink, clink, clink dragging on pavement. Not the familiar groan of a car, but something lighter, more desperate, the loose, rattling chain of a bicycle. Donnell looked up from beneath the raised hood of a silver Chevy Malibu. There she was, a tiny frame, wispy white hair, probably in her late 70s or early 80s, wrestling with an old, rusted bicycle. It seemed to have betrayed her halfway through her journey. The front wheel wobbled precariously, the chain hung like a broken necklace, and her hands trembled with every step. She looked parched, like she hadn't had a cold glass of water in hours. Donnell didn't hesitate. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked straight out to the edge of the shop lot. You okay?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Her watery eyes met his, her skin like ancient parchment, and her voice as soft as worn linen. "It just stopped working. I live over on Morningside, was just going to the corner store." Donnell nodded slowly. "Let me take a look at it." She hesitated, a flicker of worry in her gaze. "I don't have any money." He simply shrugged, a small gesture of dismissal. "Didn't ask you for none." That drew a faint, grateful smile to her lips. Back inside the garage, the other mechanics had already clocked out. Victor Redmond, the boss, a man with a perpetually red face and a constant air of hurried impatience, was long gone. Donnell settled the woman on a folding chair, brought her a bottle of cold water from the back fridge, and got to work. The bike wasn't just rusty. It was a relic, probably older than Donnell himself. The tires were dry-rotted, the brakes non-existent, the chain caked with grime and dust. But the frame, remarkably, was still strong. He could work with that. For the next hour, he labored quietly, replacing the chain, cleaning the gears, pumping the tires. He even found a spare bell and bolted it on, just because. It wasn't perfect, but it would roll smooth. When he wheeled it back out, the woman's face lit up like a porch light on a dim evening. "You didn't have to do all that," she whispered. "I know," Donnell replied, handing her the handlebars, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "But I wanted to." She looked at him long and hard, as if trying to commit his face to memory. "You got a good heart, young man. Not many like you out here." He just offered a quiet smile. "Just glad you made it back home." She reached out, her hand gently touching his arm. "What's your name?" "Donnell. Donnell Booker." "Well, Donnell Booker," she said, her voice filled with quiet gratitude. "You might have just changed my whole week." Then she rolled off slowly, pedaling carefully and steadily down the street, the little bell he'd added giving a soft, cheerful ding with every few feet. Donnell didn't know her name, didn't ask. To him, it was just another good deed, another day at the shop. He had no idea that by morning, the world would know exactly who that woman was. For now, all he knew was the heavy dread of walking into the shop the next day, bracing himself to lose the job he had given everything to. By 7:50 the next morning, the Texas sun was already punching the sky with unyielding intensity. Donnell pulled into the lot of Cliff's Auto and Tire in his beat-up 97 Tacoma, green chipped paint, back window taped with plastic. It wasn't pretty, but it ran. He stepped inside, just as he had 100 times before, quiet, early, ready to work. The familiar scent of rubber and burnt oil hung in the air, but something felt off. Victor Redmond was already there, a rarity. Victor wouldn't open the shop before 9 o'clock, even if the building were on fire. But today, he stood near the front office, arms crossed, jaw clenched, his big red face already glistening with sweat. "You got a minute, Donnell?" Victor's head jerked toward the break room. Come back here. They walked in silence, the air thick with unspoken tension. As soon as the door closed, Victor turned. I heard you stayed late yesterday. Donnell nodded. Yeah, just helping somebody out. Victor's eyes narrowed. Ain't what I heard. I heard you took company time to fix some lady's busted-up bike for free. Donnell didn't flinch. Shop was closed. I used old parts, stuff we were going to throw out. Victor took a step forward, his voice dropping, tight and slow, as if he were holding back a yell. That ain't your call to make. She was struggling, man. She could barely walk. I wasn't going to let her fall out in the street. Victor shook his head, a humorless laugh escaping him. You think this is a charity? You think folks just come here, we give out freebies like candy? Donnell stayed silent, knowing better than to argue. Victor's face hardened. You know what? You're done. You're fired. Get your tools, get out. Donnell stared at him, blinking slowly, making sure he had heard correctly. For fixing a bike. For disrespecting how I run my business. He stood still for a second, his jaw working as if he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Then, he simply turned and walked out. He didn't slam the door, didn't curse. He just packed his tools into the same dented red box he'd brought on his first day, 4 years ago. He didn't even look at Victor as he left. Outside, the heat hit him like a physical blow, but he barely registered it. He sat in his truck, hands gripping the wheel, his heart thudding in his chest like a slow, heavy drum. He'd given that place everything, showed up early, stayed late, never complained, covered for guys who called out, fixed cars on holidays. And this was how it ended. For doing the right thing. He exhaled slowly, turned the key, and drove home. Later that afternoon, Donnell sat on the old porch swing outside his duplex, sipping warm iced tea, the taste of betrayal still bitter in his mouth. He replayed every damning word of Victor's tirade, the indignity of being fired for an act of simple human decency. His mind spun, caught in the endless loop of what IFS and how could Hes. Then his phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. Is this the man who fixed the bike for my grandmother? He blinked, the question jolting him out of his spiraling thoughts. Before he could even reply, another message came in, a video link. He clicked it. The screen lit up with footage of the old woman, the one he'd helped yesterday. Someone had recorded her outside a grocery store, holding the very bike he'd mended. Her voice, cracking with emotion, filled the quiet afternoon. This young man. I didn't catch his name, but he saw me struggling and fixed my bike like it was nothing. He didn't charge me, he didn't ask for anything. He just helped. I wish more people in the world were like him. Donnell stared at the screen, stunned. The video had barely been up 2 hours, and it was already pushing 90,000 views. Comments were flying, a torrent of digital praise. He's a real one. Where is this man? Somebody find him. I don't even know him, but I'd hire him today. That simple moment, the one that had cost him his job, was now being discussed by strangers from all over, as if he were some kind of hero. But what he didn't know yet, what truly unnerved him, was that the woman he'd helped wasn't just anybody, and her people were watching. By the time the sun dipped again behind the trees, painting the sky in fiery hues that mirrored the chaos online, that video had crossed 1 million views. Donnell didn't even have a Twitter or TikTok account. His Facebook hadn't been touched in months. But his name, or at least the story of the mechanic with a heart, was everywhere. Texas man fired for helping elderly woman. Who is Donnell Booker? That last one felt particularly strange, as if he'd become a character in someone else's unfolding drama. His cousin Terry called from Dallas, his voice incredulous. Bro, you on CNN's website? Quit playing, I'm dead serious. I just saw your face in a thumbnail. I was like, that's my cousin. That's D. Donnell couldn't wrap his head around it. All this, simply because he'd done what his mama had raised him to do. Treat people with care, look out for the elderly, don't turn your back when someone needs help. It felt utterly surreal. But somewhere across town, Victor Redmond wasn't enjoying the same unexpected fame. Back at the shop, things were boiling over. Victor's phone was blowing up with angry calls. Old customers were cancelling appointments. One woman even stormed into the lobby, her phone out, live streaming, shouting, "You the one who fired that man for helping my aunt." Victor had roared from his office, "No comment," without even opening the door, but she hadn't stopped filming. Another man left a 1-star review every hour, on the hour. By the end of the day, Cliff's Auto and Tire had plummeted to 2.3 stars. Even Yelp had flagged the business for unusual activity. Victor, in his self-important delusion, thought it would all blow over in a couple of days. He was wrong. That evening, a knock came at Donnell's door around 8:15 p.m. He looked through the blinds, bracing himself for another wave of online-fueled anger, but saw only a delivery man holding a small envelope and a clipboard. No box, no bag, just the singular envelope. "You Donnell Booker?" "Yeah." "Got something for you. Sign here." Donnell signed, and the man walked off quickly. Inside, he opened the envelope slowly, almost cautiously, as if whatever lay within might bite him. It held a note, handwritten on expensive paper with gold trim, a single, elegant sentence. "Thank you for helping my grandmother. SR." He flipped it over. Tucked inside was a contact card. No phone number, no title, just the initials SR and a custom embossed logo of a falcon in mid-flight. What kind of regular person sends stuff like this? He wondered, a prickle of unease mixing with his lingering bewilderment. He showed it to his neighbor, Miss Pett, who was old school and didn't much play with technology, but knew half the city through her church connections. "SR." She squinted at the card. "That's Simone Renea, baby." Donnell just shook his head. "Who?" Miss Pett laughed out loud, a rich, knowing sound. "Lord, you really don't be on the internet, do you? Simone Renea owns half the commercial land in East Texas. She's got contracts with companies in 3 states, private schools, hospitals, energy firms, you name it." Donnell blinked, his mind struggling to process the scale. "She's also a lawyer," Miss Pett continued, her voice dropping slightly. "One of them who ain't just got money, but reach. Real quiet, real powerful. Her family been out here since back when black folks had to sit in the back of the diner." Donnell leaned against the porch railing, his head spinning. So, that old lady, the one whose broken bike he'd fixed for free, was Simone Renea's grandmother? He sat with that thought all night, unable to sleep, not out of fear, but from a profound sense of the world shifting beneath his feet. He knew how these things usually went. Rich people moved in silence, but when they moved, it mattered. The question now wasn't what happens next, but when, and who else might be watching. By the next morning, the entire tone around town had shifted. People weren't just talking, they were buzzing. News vans started circling Cliff's Auto and Tire, their hungry lenses pointed at the beleaguered shop. Victor was seen cursing in the parking lot, furiously throwing papers into the trash and slamming the back door of his office. Meanwhile, Donnell was back on that same porch swing, sipping the same warm tea, still grappling with the surreal turn his life had taken. Then, his neighbor's cousin pulled up out front in a dusty grey sedan, leaning out the window. "You might want to turn on your TV, baby. Something's going on over at Redmond's house." But Donnell didn't need to turn on the TV. He was about to get front row seats to the main event. Victor Redmond lived about 15 minutes outside Tyler, off a long gravel road lined with pine trees and rusty wire fences. His house wasn't a mansion, but it sat on a substantial piece of land, boasting a big square driveway and a custom grill on the porch. 2 flags flapped in the wind out front, one American, one Texan. He always said he liked his peace and quiet, but peace was the last thing he got that morning. Donnell was brushing crumbs off his shirt when his neighbor, Jerome, came pounding on the door. "Bro, you seen this? You gotta see this." "What you talking about?" Donnell asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "Victor. His place, man. Just come look." They rushed across the street to Jerome's living room, where the flat-screen TV was paused on a still image from a local news drone. It was an aerial, wide shot, 7 big black SUVs, all parked tight across Victor's driveway like a private blockade. Tinted windows, matching license plates, the kind of vehicles you only saw in movies or outside federal buildings. No police sirens, No flashing lights, no yelling. Just pressure. Silent, deliberate pressure. Back at Victor's place, he stood frozen in his doorway, barefoot in sweatpants, coffee sloshed onto the porch boards. What the hell? He stepped outside slowly, eyes scanning the intimidating line of SUVs. The engine of the first one was still running. It purred low, like a warning. Then, the front doors opened in near unison. From each vehicle, a person stepped out. Men and women, all dressed sharp, not flashy, not loud, but impeccably tailored suits, clean shoes, earpieces, and calm, unreadable faces. One woman stepped forward. Black slacks, grey blouse, short afro, eyes like glass. She didn't say her name. She didn't need to. She just held out an envelope. Victor didn't take it right away. What is this? She didn't flinch. An offer. What kind of offer? The woman tilted her head slightly. The kind you only get once. Victor looked around as if someone was going to jump out and say he was on some prank show, but nobody laughed. He took the envelope, opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He read it twice, and his face cycled through anger, confusion, and finally, outright fear. The woman spoke again. You have 24 hours. After that, this is no longer an offer. It becomes a consequence. Then, one by one, they all got back into the SUVs. Not a single word more. Doors closed, engines still humming low. Victor stepped back, blinking, shoulders slumped, like he'd just been told his house was on fire and he couldn't save anything inside. At home, Donnell sat on Jerome's couch, staring at the screen in disbelief. You think they're feds? Jerome asked, his voice a whisper. I don't think this got nothing to do with the government, Donnell said quietly. Then he saw it, a brief close-up as one SUV pulled away, and etched into the side panel near the license plate was a tiny falcon symbol. The same symbol from the note. Simone Renea. She wasn't sending threats, she was sending a message. Word spread quickly. You couldn't block off a man's driveway with 7 black SUVs and expect people not to talk. Some folks said it was a stunt. Others said Victor owed money. But most people, especially the ones who'd watched the viral video of the old lady from the store, had a different theory. She's got people looking out for her, they said. And if Donnell was the one who looked out for her first, well, he probably had folks looking out for him now too. Later that afternoon, Victor closed the shop. He didn't say why, just locked up early and put a sign on the door, out for repairs. Nobody believed that. He wasn't the kind of man who took sick days. Donnell still hadn't reached out to the woman, hadn't called, hadn't responded to the note, but he kept it on the table next to his keys. He knew this wasn't over. The kind of people who move in silence don't make noise unless it's for a reason. They were planning something, and Donnell had a feeling it was bigger than a bike. But what he didn't know yet was why she had chosen him. It was the kind of morning where the air felt too still. No breeze, no birds, just heat rising early and slow, like the day was holding its breath. Donnell was tying his shoes, getting ready to take a walk, maybe clear his head a little, when Miss Pett knocked on his door again. 3 quick taps, no pause. He opened it and found her standing there in her house robe, holding a mug and staring off down the street like she'd seen a ghost. You might want to come out here, baby, she whispered. He stepped onto the porch. At first, he didn't see anything, just his neighbor's cat creeping across the sidewalk and a trash can tipped over from the night before. Then, from the corner of the block, one, then another, then 5 more. 7 black SUVs, turning slowly onto his street. But they didn't park at the curb. They rolled straight up the narrow driveway of Donnell's duplex. Jerome stepped out from across the street. Oh, snap, bro, they back. Miss Pett clutched her mug tighter. They came for you now. Donnell didn't move, didn't panic. He just stood there, watching the SUVs stop in perfect sync, tight formation, engines running, windows still tinted. It was quiet enough to hear a sprinkler ticking 3 lawns over. Then, just like at Victor's house, the doors opened. Out stepped the same crew, same sharp clothes, calm faces, no weapons, no shouting. One man walked forward this time. Tall, dark skin, square jaw, low fade, maybe mid-40s. His eyes were calm, The kind of calm that only comes with deep experience or immense power. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at Donnell. "You Donnell Booker?"
"Yeah."
The man nodded once, reached into his inside jacket pocket, and pulled out a second envelope, thicker this time. "Ms. Renea wanted you to have this." Donnell took it slowly. The man stepped back. "She said to tell you this isn't a gift. It's an invitation." Donnell raised an eyebrow. "To what?" The man cracked the smallest smile. "To something that fits your heart better than that old job ever could." Before Donnell could say another word, the man turned and walked back to his SUV. The others followed. Doors shut, engines rumbled low. They pulled out as smoothly as they came, one after another, turning the corner without a single horn or screech. Gone. He didn't open the envelope right away. His hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of not knowing what this meant. He finally sat down and tore the seal. Inside was a single-page letter, clean font, watermarked paper. It read, "Donnell, I don't believe in handouts, but I do believe in investing in good people who still know the value of kindness. My grandmother doesn't ask for help often. She didn't need to. But the way you treated her, without knowing who she was, told me everything I needed to know. I'm offering you a new opportunity, one with real purpose, real impact. If you're interested, call this number. Ask for Colleen. Either way, thank you. You reminded my family what integrity looks like. SR." At the bottom was a black business card with a phone number, no name, just that same falcon emblem again. Jerome passed on the sidewalk. "Man, you in some kind of movie right now." Miss Pett just kept nodding. "You reap what you sow, baby. You sowed good." Donnell sat back in his chair, envelope in one hand, card in the other. His phone buzzed. "Terry again. You see the news yet?" "No, why?" "Victor's shop, man. Boarded up. For sale sign already in the window. Somebody said he left a note on the door talking about personal reasons." Donnell didn't say a word. He just looked out at the road where those black SUVs had been. But he wasn't thinking about Victor anymore. He was thinking about what kind of job makes a woman with that kind of reach send 7 cars to your house just to say thank you. Before Donnell called the number, he needed answers. He had too much respect to just jump into something blind, especially when the people involved moved with the kind of calculated precision Simone Renea did. So, he went back to the one place in town where secrets didn't stay secret for long, Midtown Barbershop, owned by Reggie. Reggie had been cutting hair, listening, and telling half-truths since the early 90s. He had a radio voice and a memory like a steel trap. When Donnell walked in, Reggie looked up from lining a kid's fade and said, "You finally here to ask about Ms. Loretta?" Donnell froze. "You knew?" "Man, everybody knew after that video. What you didn't know is who she used to be. Sit down." Reggie took his time. The kid's haircut came first, then he cleaned his clippers, wiped the chair, and finally looked Donnell in the face. Her full name's Loretta Jameson Renea. Born in 1938. Taught school for 35 years, history, social studies, civic rights, you name it. She marched in the 60s, helped desegregate the old library on 5th Street. Donnell nodded slowly. A real quiet lady, never made noise about her past. Folks don't realize she helped found the Eastline Legal Defense Fund back when it was just a group of 5 teachers in a church basement. Reggie paused. "You remember that case last year, that black nurse who got let go for speaking up about the conditions at Pine Lake Care Home?" "Yeah," Donnell said, "they sued, right? Won 8 figures. That was Simone's work. Her grandmother coached her through it." Now, it all made sense. That bike wasn't just an old ride, it was her independence, her story, maybe even her pride. "You fixed more than a chain," Reggie said, leaning forward. "You showed her you still got people in this world who do the right thing when nobody's watching." Donnell sat quiet, absorbing it all. They don't show up in black cars unless they think you matter. Simone doesn't throw her name around. If she's offering something, it's big. Bigger than this town. That afternoon, Donnell sat in his truck for a full 20 minutes before picking up the phone. He called the number. A woman picked up, her voice warm and calm. Colleen speaking. This is Donnell Booker. I was told to ask for you. There was no pause, no who. We've been expecting your call, Mr. Booker. 3 days later, he was on a train headed to Austin. First-class ticket, hotel room paid for, clothes cleaned and pressed courtesy of a man who knocked on his door holding garment bags like he was delivering for a fashion shoot. He hadn't asked for any of it, but somehow everything fit just right. The meeting took place in a modest-looking building near the Capitol. Nothing flashy, but inside, every room felt like it mattered. No wasted space, no loud colors, just focus. Colleen met him in the lobby. Slim, maybe late 30s, glasses, sharp suit. She smiled and led him to a conference room. Inside sat Simone Renea. She stood when he entered, shorter than he expected, silver streaks through her hair, a presence that filled the room without her having to raise her voice. Mr. Booker, she said, extending her hand. My grandmother told me all about you. He shook it, firm and steady. I don't really know what to say. She motioned to the chair. Then I'll talk first. For the next half hour, she laid it all out. Her foundation was launching a new initiative. Repair training and mentorship for underprivileged youth. Auto repair, vac, plumbing, trades that paid well and changed lives. They had funding, facilities, instructors. What they didn't have was someone to lead the first site. Someone local, respected, patient, hands-on. Someone who still believed in fixing things, and people. That's why she chose him. Donnell sat still. Why me? Simone folded her hands. Because you didn't do it for attention. You didn't know who she was. You helped because it was the right thing. That's the kind of man I want leading my first program. He looked down, then back up. I ain't got no college degree. Just grease on my hands and a beat-up truck. She smiled. Good. That means you're exactly who they'll listen to. And in that moment, Donnell realized this wasn't just a second chance. It was his first real calling. A month later, the auto shop on Broad Street was boarded up. The for sale sign out front had faded from sun exposure. Weeds crept through the cracks in the parking lot. The place looked like it had been abandoned for years, not weeks. Victor Redmond never came back. No one knew where he went. Some said he moved down near Corpus, others said he had debts. A few joked he probably got run out of town by a woman with more power than the mayor. But Donnell, he wasn't worried about Victor. He was busy building something better. In the old East Side Tech building, they gutted the front room and repainted the walls, hanging up banners with bold words like mentorship and equity and craft. New toolkits lined the back walls, stacks of tires in one corner, engine blocks in another, wiring, brake pads, soldering irons, all donated. And right at the front door, a new sign in bold black letters. Booker Center for Trade Excellence. He never asked for it to be named after him. Simone did it without telling him. When he saw it for the first time, he stood in front of it for almost 5 full minutes, didn't say a word. The first group of young men and women arrived 2 weeks after that. Some had just aged out of foster care, some had dropped out of school, a couple had records. All of them needed something they hadn't been given before, a shot that came without judgment. Donnell didn't talk like a CEO, he didn't wear suits. He still had grease under his nails most days. But when he talked, they listened. Look, he said one morning, standing in front of 8 teens and early 20s kids who were halfway convinced they'd already missed their chance. I didn't get here 'cause I knew somebody. I got here because I didn't walk past somebody when they needed help. That's it. He held up a wrench. You know what this is? One kid shrugged. A wrench? Nope. It's a key. You learn how to use this, you never got to beg nobody for work again. They leaned in, and just like that, he had them. One afternoon, a silver SUV pulled up out front. The back door opened, and out stepped Loretta Renea, holding her cane but walking just fine. Donnell walked out to meet her. You getting around better now? He asked. She smiled. Still don't trust hills, but flat ground's mine again. He nodded. You didn't have to come out here. I did, she said, because I wanted to see it with my own eyes. She looked up at the building, at the name above the door. They'll remember this place. And they'll remember you. He didn't know what to say, so he just said, thank you. She shook her head. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You gave me a reason to tell my granddaughter to get involved. They stood quietly a moment longer. She touched his arm. And for the record, that bike still rides smooth as butter. On the walls inside the center, Donnell put up a photo. It was just a snapshot, one someone took the day of that viral video, Loretta holding her bike, smiling. He added a caption under it, written by hand, "You never know who you're helping when you choose to be kind." A few months later, Simone Renea came down to speak at the grand opening. Press showed up, local politicians, big donors. But during her speech, she turned away from the cameras and looked at the students behind her. If we want to change the world, we start by honoring the quiet people, she said. The ones who don't wait for permission to do good. That's why we're standing in a building named after a man who chose kindness when no one was looking. Applause echoed through the hall, but Donnell, he stayed at the back, arms crossed, watching the young people scribble notes, ask questions, talk about talk and timing belts. That was the real reward. Some people dream of fame, others chase fortune. Donnell never wanted either. All he ever wanted was to be useful, to do right. And somehow, that small moment, fixing a bike for an old woman in the heat of the day, turned into something bigger than he could have imagined. Because the truth is, the good you do when nobody's watching might be the very thing that rewrites your future. Help without expecting a return. Treat people right. Don't wait for a reason. You never know who's watching, or who you're helping. Because when you move with heart, the world finds a way to meet you where you are.